You're watching Noir Street. I'm your host, Nero Wolfe. Every story hides a secret, and every shadow hides a clue. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. Subscribe, tap the like button, and join us as we drift into mystery. Chapter 1. The Chair Against the Wall. There are people who believe a detective's life is built of fingerprints, footprints, bullets, and bloodstains. They have never spent 20 minutes watching Nero Wolfe look at a chair. The chair was not remarkable. It was one of the 4 walnut visitor chairs kept in Wolfe's office for people who had money, grief, fear, guilt, or some combination of the 4. During the interview, it had stood facing Wolfe's desk. After the interview, it stood with its face to the wall and its back to the room. That was all. Inspector Kramer, who had already spent an hour refusing to be pleased by anyone, looked at it and snorted. "Furniture," he said. "Not evidence." Wolfe, from behind his desk, gave the chair one glance. His eyes moved over it, stopped for less than a second, and returned to Kramer. "Furniture," he said, "unlike people, does not usually lie." Kramer's face reddened, throat tightened, and decided against exploding. He had come to the brownstone on West 35th Street that afternoon with 4 citizens and a murder, and he had expected Wolfe to be obstructive. What annoyed him was the suspicion that it might be useful. I was standing near my desk with my notebook still open. The 4 citizens had just left. Fritz had closed the door behind them, and the hall had swallowed their voices. Cold rain, expensive wool, nervous tobacco, and the faint sour trace of panic. I had noticed the chair because I am paid, among other things, to notice things Wolfe does not want to move for himself. "It was facing you during the interview," I said. "Of course it was," Kramer snapped. "They all were. Yes, sir." "That one has changed its opinion." Kramer turned on me. "Goodwin, if you and Wolfe are going to make a case out of a chair, say so now." Wolfe sighed. "You have no such squad. If you had, it would be better trained than homicide." Kramer jabbed a cigar into his mouth and did not light it. That was a bad sign. The chair had been occupied by Ellen Ward. That too mattered. The afternoon had begun at 4:11 when Inspector Kramer arrived without an appointment. He had with him 4 people connected with the death of Harlan Price, a private banker, widower and collector of other people's weaknesses, and general nuisance to his relatives. Price had died the previous evening in his study of his brownstone on East 68th Street. The first report said heart failure. The second said poison. The third said murder. Wolfe had received a telephone call from Price at 7:20 the night before. I had taken it. Price had asked for Wolfe and refused me, as if I had been a waiter offering inferior coffee. "Tell Mr. Wolfe," he had said, "that a chair is against the wall." That was the whole message. He had started to say more, but the line went dead. Wolfe, who was at dinner, instructed me to call back after the meal. When I did, the Price house reported that Mr. Price was not receiving calls. At 9:42, Harlan Price was found dead in his library. The 4 people Kramer brought had all been in Price's house that evening. There was Ellen Ward, Price's secretary from the downtown office, 30 or thereabouts, dark-eyed and too quiet. Her face had the look of a woman who had learned to keep thoughts from reaching her mouth. There was Owen Price, Harlan's nephew, a restless young man waiting for money his uncle had refused to release. He had inherited expectations from his uncle and debts from himself. There was Alice Price, Price's lawyer, correct, polished, and cold, with a silver-headed cane. And there was Mark Bell, Price's accountant, careful, pale, and uneasy whenever the chair was mentioned. Kramer arranged them in the office like pieces on a board. Alice took the red leather chair. Owen sat nearest the globe and began tapping one heel. Mark chose the chair opposite my desk. Ellen took the 4th chair, the plain walnut one near the wall, the chair that was now turned away from us like a child in disgrace. Wolfe questioned them for 53 minutes. Harlan Price, we learned, had ruled his house as he ruled his business, by discovering weakness and assigning payments. He kept files on everyone. His study contained a wall safe, a heavy desk, old speaking tubes, locked papers, and the chair that would become the center of the case. "What papers were on the table last evening?" Wolfe asked Ellen. "I do not know." "You worked for him, in the office downtown." "Not always in the house." "But you were in the house last evening." "Yes, he sent for me. He said there were letters to type before morning." "Did you type them?" "No, he changed his mind." "At what hour?" About 7. Before or after he telephoned me? Ellen's eyes flickered. After, I think. You heard the call? No, I saw him replace the receiver. He was angry. What did he say? He said, "Now the fat man will have to listen." Owen Price stated that he had dined with his uncle at 6 and quarreled with him at 6:30. The subject was money. Did you threaten him? Kramer asked. I said he would be sorry. Original, I said. Alice said she spent the evening upstairs with a headache. She came down at 8:15, found the library door closed and heard voices inside. Mark claimed he had left the house at 7:30. His driver took him to his club. The club record showed Mark signed in at 8:28. The gap was large enough for murder. Wolfe asked them all about the chair. None knew what Price meant. None had moved a chair. Kramer was impatient. Price had hundreds of chairs. You can't build a murder case out of one. Not one, Wolfe said. The right one. When the 4 guests left, Alice rose first. Owen knocked his chair with his knee. Mark laughed. Ellen stood last. In the hall, Mark offered her assistance with her coat. She refused it. Then Fritz closed the door. And the chair faced the wall. Kramer scowled at it. Maybe one of them bumped it. No, I said. A bumped chair turns crooked. This one was turned square, Wolfe said. Archie, observe. I bent, walked around the chair and looked without touching. There's a thread on the left arm, I said. Grey, not from my suit. Anything on the floor? A white crumb near the right front leg. Plaster or wall dust, I got the magnifier. The leather back had a shallow indentation near the top rail. Near the seam, a tiny spot of brownish wax clung to the leather. Wax, I said. Brown, a fleck. Where on the back? Upper left seam from the sitter's side. Then if the chair had remained facing me, the mark would have faced away from us. Kramer frowned. If someone wanted to hide the mark, why turn it so the back showed? To hide the sitter's side, Wolfe said. The chair's face was toward the wall. Whatever was on the side where a person's back would rest was now hidden. Archie moved the chair straight out. 2 feet. On the inner face of the chair back, held between the leather and the wooden frame, was a folded scrap of paper. Kramer moved first. I blocked him. Goodwin, take it out. I used tweezers and placed the scrap on Wolfe's desk. It had been torn from a sheet of typing paper. 4 words in pencil. Ask the wrong chair. Kramer stared. Wolfe leaned forward. Who wrote it? Kramer demanded. Under Miss Ward's back. Ellen had sat in that chair. Kramer lit his cigar. So Miss Ward left you a message? Perhaps. Why not speak? Fear. Of the person who left with her. 3 people left with her. Yes. The note says, ask the wrong chair. What does that mean? It means the chair against the wall was not the chair Mr. Price wished me to consider. I said, Price said a chair was against the wall. Someone here turns a chair against the wall and leaves a note saying, ask the wrong chair. That is either helpful or somebody has an elaborate sense of humor. Murderers often have, Wolfe said, but they are rarely funny. Kramer took the note in an envelope with the grey thread, the white crumb and the fleck of wax. Kramer said, all right. Suppose Miss Ward left it. Why? To tell us that Price's message has been misunderstood. By whom? By everyone. Kramer's eyes narrowed. You know which chair Price meant. No, but Miss Ward knows, or thinks she knows, that a chair has been substituted in the inquiry. That she feared to speak in the presence of the others. Kramer sent Pearlie for photographs of Price's library. I spread them on Wolfe's desk. The study chair stood near the west wall, close to the hidden panel and the document lift. One was not even. The study chair stood slightly out of line, as if it had recently been turned and restored. Wolfe looked at it. That one. What is behind it? Wall panel. Is the panel like the others? Kramer looked again. Yes. No, the grain runs horizontally. In the adjacent panels it runs vertically. A door? I asked. A concealed compartment, perhaps, Wolfe said. Mr. Price called me because a chair had been placed to conceal or indicate it. Miss Ward's note tells us we are to ask the wrong chair. Something about that chair points elsewhere. Before Kramer reached the door, the telephone rang. Nero Wolfe's office. Archie Goodwin speaking. A woman's voice said, please do not say my name. I covered the mouthpiece. Female, wants no name. Proceed, you have me. I left something. Did he find it? Who is he? You know who, please. Did Mr. Wolfe find it? Yes. A breath came through the wire. The chair in the library was moved after Mr. Price died, she said. I saw the marks on the carpet, but it was not the chair by the west wall. It was the desk chair. Ask why a dead man would rise and push back his own chair. Are you Ellen Ward? The line clicked. Kramer came back. Was it her? I repeated it. Desk chair. Yes, Wolfe said. The wrong chair indeed. Kramer left at speed. At 6:30, Kramer telephoned. The wall panel behind the study chair opened, but the important evidence had already been moved through the hidden mechanism. The desk chair had fresh scrapes on its front legs. Price's body had been arranged beside the desk after the chair had already done its work. At 6:42, another call came. Ellen Ward had been found 3 blocks from Price's house, unconscious in a service alley. She was alive, but barely. In her glove was a second scrap of paper. It said, "The chair was turned before he drank," I told Wolfe. He did not move. After a moment he said, "Archie, get your hat. Miss Ward has corrected the grammar of the murder, and grammar may save her life." That was how the case began. Not with a confession, not with a weapon, but with a chair sulking at the wall and Nero Wolfe insisting that furniture, unlike people, had no talent for lying. Chapter 2. The Dead Man in the Study. The trouble with a dead banker is that everyone expects him to have died of numbers. When a butcher is murdered, people look for a knife. When a private banker is found on the carpet beside his study desk, people immediately begin talking about wills, accounts, and missing ledgers. Harlan Price had kept 3 safes. That was one of the first things Inspector Kramer told us the next morning. After he had returned to Wolfe's office with his hat wet, his cigar unlit, and his temper already in use. "The house has 1 safe in the study wall," Kramer said, "1 in Price's bedroom and 1 in the private banking office downtown." The study safe was locked. The bedroom safe was locked. "The office safe hasn't been opened yet." Wolfe did not look impressed. "What killed Mr. Price?" "Poison in whiskey. Medical examiner says it acted fast. 10 minutes, maybe less. Then he did not drink it before locking himself in for the night. Because a man dying in 10 minutes cannot conduct an argument heard by 4 witnesses over a longer period." Kramer put the cigar between his teeth. The dead man was Harlan Price, 64, private banker, widower, collector of other people's weaknesses. He had been found at 9:30 the night before in the study of his brownstone on East 68th Street, lying beside his desk. The first doctor had called it heart failure. The second doctor had smelled bitter almonds in the glass. There had been 4 people in the house. Owen Price, Harlan's nephew, had been staying there for 6 weeks, and waiting for an allowance his uncle had refused to increase. Ellen Ward, Price's secretary, had come from the downtown office to type correspondence. Simon Drake, Price's lawyer, had been summoned to discuss a change in the will. Mark Bell, Price's accountant, had arrived at 7 with ledgers. Each of them claimed to have heard Harlan Price quarreling in the study. Each had heard it from a different place in the hall. Each insisted no one had entered the study after Price locked himself inside. Kramer said, "Price entered the study at 7:25. Ellen Ward says he locked the door behind him." At 7:40, Owen heard voices from the main hall. At 7:50, Drake heard a quarrel near the staircase. At 8:05, Mark Bell heard Price shouting from the passage outside the pantry. At 8:20, Ellen heard him again from the writing alcove. I said, "He got around for a man locked in 1 room. Wolfe asked, "Was the other voice identified?" "No. Each witness says Price was angry with someone, but the other voice was low." "Male? Female? Human?" Kramer scowled. "Don't start." Wolfe leaned back. "A quarrel heard from 4 locations by 4 witnesses, yet no one heard words enough to identify the other speaker. That is not testimony." "It is missed. They heard Price, did they?" Kramer said, "I have the other 3 downstairs. In your front room." Wolfe let them sit without greeting them. Owen took the red chair. Drake sat near the globe. Mark Bell chose the same walnut chair that had turned against the wall the night before, noticed it and frowned. Wolfe noticed that too. "Mr. Bell, that chair displeases you." The accountant blinked. "No. You looked at it as a man looks at a figure that will not balance," Kramer said. "Ask about the murder, not the upholstery. Mr. Price, your uncle locked himself in his study at 7:25. Owen wet his lips. "Yes, I heard the key. From where?" "The main hall. We had argued about money, $10,000. He had promised it. What did you hear at 7:40? My uncle's voice. He said, 'You will sign tonight or I will send for the police.' And the second voice? I could not distinguish it. It came from the study. Through a closed door? Yes. Wolfe looked at Kramer. You tested whether words can be heard there? Not yet. Wolfe turned to Simon Drake. You were present to change a will, Drake said calmly. Mr. Price intended to reduce Owen's share and create a trust for Ellen Ward. Owen's head jerked toward Drake. What? Why a trust for Miss Ward? I do not know. What did you hear? At about 7:50 I was on the staircase landing. I heard Price say, you used my name once. You will not use it again. To whom? I could not say. Wolfe turned to Mark Bell. What did you hear? At 8:05 near the pantry passage, I heard Mr. Price say, the ledger is mine. And the chair proves it. Kramer's head turned slowly toward Bell. You didn't give me that sentence. I was not certain of the last words. I remembered them more clearly after thinking. Wolfe muttered, memory improves most when it has been watered by fear. Continue. The second voice? I heard none. It sounded as if he spoke into the room. Wolfe leaned forward. You heard only Price? Yes. Where exactly were you? In the passage beside the pantry. Mrs. Quinn, the cook, asked if I wanted coffee. I had remembered a ledger I left in the front room. Was anyone with you? No, I said, convenient. Bell's eyes moved to me. I agree, Wolfe asked. What ledger did Price call his? Bell looked at Drake, then Owen. The green ledger. Mr. Price kept a private record of loans made outside his banking office. Some were legal. Some were not. The green ledger contained names, collateral, and conditions. Where is it? I do not know. Was it there when Price was found? No, Kramer stood. You neglected that? I told Sergeant Stebbins a ledger was missing. Wolfe raised a hand. The green ledger is now central. Mr. Price telephoned me about a chair. The note here instructed us to ask the wrong chair. Miss Ward was attacked after adding that the chair was turned before he drank. Mr. Bell now reports Price said, the chair proves ownership of the ledger. We are approaching meaning. The telephone rang. Pearlie Stebbins was calling from the Price house. They tested the study door. Ordinary speech cannot be understood clearly from the hall. From the pantry passage, nothing. Kramer glared at the three men. All right. One of you explain how you heard exact sentences that couldn't be heard. Wolfe said. They heard them from somewhere else. Drake frowned. That is absurd. Describe the hall. Kramer did. Near the hall table stood a tall speaking tube, long unused, once connected to the servants' rooms and kitchen. There was also a radiator pipe running behind the wall. Wolfe's eyes closed. There are houses that do not forget their pipes. Kramer said, You think someone spoke through a tube? I think someone arranged to be heard from places where the study door could not carry words. If each witness heard a different sentence from a different place, the quarrel may have been distributed. Wolfe asked whether Price's study chair had been moved. Kramer said the desk chair had scrapes on its front legs and had been pushed back after death. There was a faint mark under its left arm, as if something had been tied there. The chair proves it, Bell murmured. Mr. Price's desk chair was not ordinary. It had been made by one of his first companies. There was a hidden compartment in the underside of the seat. Kramer stared at him. And you did not mention this? I remembered only now. Wolfe said, Inspector, send a man to examine the underside of that chair. 5 minutes later, Kramer got his report. The underside of the study chair did contain a compartment. It was open and empty. Around the latch was a trace of white powder and a strand of grey thread. Grey thread like the thread found on the chair in Wolfe's office. Wolfe opened his eyes. Now the chair speaks. What does it say? Kramer demanded. That Mr. Price's last telephone message was not poetic. He was directing attention to the chair that held something. Miss Ward's note warned that attention had been shifted to the wrong chair. The turned chair in this office was a signal repeating the movement of the study chair. At that moment, Fritz entered. He carried a small tray with a white card on it. A messenger left this for Mr. Goodwin, he said. The card bore no envelope. 7 words in block letters. The dead man was not beside the desk. Wolfe looked at it, then at the 3 men. Inspector, you may now revise the room. Harlan Price was moved after death. Owen's face had gone white. Simon Drake's was expressionless. Mark Bell stared at the walnut chair, as if it might turn toward the wall by itself. Wolfe leaned back. Archie, get Miss Ward's condition. If she can speak, she may tell us which chair was right before someone makes another attempt to silence her. I went for the telephone. Behind me, Kramer said, "You're enjoying this." "No," Wolfe said. "I resent it. A murderer has used furniture, pipes, and grammar to waste my morning. I intend to be repaid." Chapter 3, 4 Positions, 4 Stories, Nero. Wolfe dislikes maps unless they show countries large enough to have kitchens. Floor plans irritate him. Blueprints irritate him. He says they pretend to be facts when they are only arrangements of facts. Nevertheless, at 11 o'clock the next morning, Wolfe's office rug became Harlan Price's front hall. Wolfe sat behind his desk. Inspector Kramer stood with his back to the bookshelves, chewing an unlit cigar. Pearlie Stebbins leaned near the door. The 4 suspects occupied the chairs across from Wolfe. Owen Price came first. He looked as if sleep had not trusted him. Ellen Ward came second. She had a bandage beneath her dark hair and a bruise shadowing the left side of her face. Being hit on the head had made her economical. Simon Drake came third, correct, polished, and cold. His black cane had a silver head. Mark Bell came last. Looking worse than he had the previous day, Wolfe inspected them without pleasure. Mr. Goodwin, cards. I took 4 folded cards, wrote the names in block letters. Kramer took a sheet from his pocket. Harlan Price's front hall is 23 feet from the front door to the rear passage. Staircase on the right. Hall table on the left. Umbrella stand near the study door. Study door halfway down the hall. Library door opposite. Pantry passage at the rear. I used the edges of the rug for walls. Wolfe's desk for the study desk, the globe for the staircase. The large walnut chair nearest the wall represented Harlan Price's study chair. Facing the desk, Wolfe said, "Mr. Price, stand where you stood when you heard your uncle's voice." Owen moved to the area near the globe. "By the front stairs," I said, placing his card. "Why were you there?" "I had gone to fetch my coat from the upstairs room." Then I heard him speaking. "What words?" "He said, 'You will sign tonight or I will send for the police.'" "Did you hear another voice?" A murmur. "From the study." "Through the closed door?" "I assumed so." Wolfe frowned. "Do not assume." "From the study." Wolfe turned to Ellen Ward. "Your place." She stepped to the left side of the rug. "By the hall table." "Sorting letters." "About 8:20. You heard Price?" He said, "The chair was not moved for nothing." Kramer's head jerked up. "You didn't tell me that." "I did not remember it clearly until after I woke in the hospital." "Did you hear another voice?" "No." He sounded as if he were answering someone, but I heard only him. "Could he have been reading?" "No." The voice rose and broke. "Reading would have been smoother, unless performed." Her eyes moved to his. "Yes." Wolfe turned to Simon Drake. He walked to the imaginary umbrella stand. "Why?" "My umbrella." "It was raining earlier." "Not at 8. "No." "Yet you went to retrieve an umbrella you did not need." Drake smiled faintly. "Habit is not a crime. It is frequently an accomplice." "What did you hear?" Harlan Price said, "You used my name once. You will not use it again." Second voice, a murmur. "From the study. Police tests say ordinary speech could not be heard. Emotion carries. Words do not travel on emotion. They travel on air." Wolfe looked at Mark Bell. The accountant went not to the pantry passage, as he had said before, but to the area opposite the study. "You are by the library door." "Yes, I was mistaken yesterday. What words did you hear?" "The ledger is mine and the chair proves it." No second voice. "Did the words come from the study?" "I believed so." "From across the hall." Wolfe's eyes were half closed now. "Archie, stand in the study. Speak each sentence through the closed door at ordinary volume." I spoke Owen's sentence. From the office side, they reported fragments, not words. Wolfe turned to Kramer. "The study door cannot account for the testimony." Then they lied, perhaps, or they were supplied with words. Ellen stared at the pencil representing the speaking tube. It had a brass mouthpiece. "Mr. Price had workmen in last month. He said old pipes made drafts." Mark Bell said, "He had the tube connected to the study." I saw an invoice. Grayson Mechanical. "Authorized by Mr. Price. Why did you not mention this yesterday?" "I did not connect it to the murder. You are an accountant and did not connect a hidden passage for sound to 4 financial witnesses hearing impossible words." Simon Drake said, "This is fantasy. Men like what serves them," Wolfe said. "What did the tube serve?" No one answered. "Miss Ward, when you left your note in my office, you wrote that the chair was turned before Price drank." "Explain." Owen stared at her. "You left that note?" Yes. When I entered the house at 6:45, Mr. Price's study chair was not facing the desk. It was turned toward the west wall. That is impossible, Mark Bell said. Why? Because when he worked, he always faced the desk. Ellen continued. The chair was turned toward the wall panel behind it. Mr. Price was standing beside it, with the green ledger in his hand. He told me to forget what I saw. He pressed something under the chair arm and the panel opened. Kramer said, "My men opened the wall panel behind the row of chairs." "Wrong chair," Ellen said softly. Wolfe nodded. "Just so. Archie, turned the chair toward the wall." I did. The room changed. Positions altered. From Owen's position by the stairs, the turned chair would be invisible. From Ellen's, a sliver of its back might be seen. From Drake's, the study door itself blocked the view. From Mark Bell's library door position, if the study door opened even a little, the chair and the wall behind it could be seen clearly. Wolfe said, "Mr. Bell, you now understand why exact position matters," Kramer snapped. "Did you see the chair turned?" "No, the door was locked." "Who told you?" "Everyone heard the key," Wolfe said. "A key may be turned before a man dies, after he dies, or by a man who is not inside the room. Sound proves little without sight." Kramer said, "Where does that leave us?" "With a chair that was turned before Price drank, and later faced the desk as if nothing had happened. Therefore someone entered the study after Miss Ward saw it, turned it back, removed something from its compartment, poisoned Price or found him poisoned, and arranged the body beside the desk." Ellen's hands were tight. "Mr. Price said the chair proved ownership of the ledger. He said it before anyone heard him say it. At 6:50 to me. If they dispute the green ledger, the chair proves it." "Did he say what was in the chair?" "No, only that it would make them all crawl." Kramer asked, "What about the attack on you?" "I left your office because Mr. Drake told me Kramer wanted us all taken back to the house." Drake's eyebrows rose. "I said no such thing. I heard your voice behind me in the hall, and that is false." Wolfe's eyes went to the speaking tube pencil. "Miss Ward, did you see him?" "No." "Another distributed sentence," I said, Drake's composure frayed. "Are you suggesting I attacked Miss Ward by ventriloquism?" "No, a blackjack requires less imagination." Mark Bell said, "A hidden accomplice?" "Or a device?" "Or a man who knew your voices well enough to imitate them." Wolfe pointed to the cards. "Here are 4 positions and 4 stories." The sentences were not fragments of one quarrel. They were 4 separate messages delivered to 4 positions. Kramer sent Pearlie to telephone the house. Behind the hall table inside the wall, the police had found a brass junction box attached to the old speaking tube. 4 narrow pipes ran from it, one toward the stairs, one near the umbrella stand, one behind the library door, and one into the pantry passage. Each had a sliding shutter. "Price had a private whispering gallery," I said. "Not whispering," Wolfe said. "Accusing." Kramer added that one shutter bore fresh fingerprints but smudged. On the floor behind the hall table lay a small folded card. It was blank except for an ink mark, a black square. Ellen said, "Mr. Price used black squares on account cards when a debt was uncollectible." I picked up the 4 folded cards. Under Mark Bell's card I found a small grey fibre. "That is from the rug," Mark said. "Our rug is red," I told him. The fibre matched the grey thread found on the chair in Wolfe's office. Mark looked down at his sleeve. The cuff seam was frayed, and a grey thread had come loose. Kramer smiled without warmth. "Well, well," Wolfe did not smile. "No, too easy." Kramer slammed his palm on the desk. "You asked for positions." He changes his, stands where he could see the chair and drops matching thread. "What do you want, a signed confession?" "A competent murderer," Wolfe said. "This is clumsy, and clumsiness at the right moment is often arranged." The telephone rang. Fritz. "A man has left a package." On the hall table lay a narrow parcel wrapped in brown paper. Tied around it was grey thread. Inside was a small brass mouthpiece from a speaking tube. "Wiped clean," and a card 4 positions. 4 stories, 1 dead man listening, Wolfe said. "Inspector, return to the Price house and remove every tube. Pipe, shutter, and panel in that hall. Mr. Price built a machine for secrets. The murderer used it for murder." Kramer left with the package. When the door closed, Wolfe turned to Ellen Ward. "Miss Ward, you will remain here until Mr. Kramer provides protection." "Because I saw it turned?" "No, because you saw it before the murderer knew it mattered. 4 positions, 4 stories, and somewhere among them, a 5th position nobody had yet admitted." Chapter 4. The chair that changed direction there. Are moments in an investigation when a room becomes more interesting than the people in it. That afternoon, Wolfe's office was one of those rooms. Owen Price, Ellen Ward, Simon Drake, and Mark Bell were all back in the office, because Wolfe had sent word that the previous reconstruction was incomplete. Fritz entered with coffee at 3:12. That may sound unimportant. It was not. Fritz placed the tray on the low table, poured for everyone except Wolfe, who was having beer. Kramer set his cigar too close to a saucer. Fritz gave him a look. Kramer moved it. Now, Wolfe said, we shall repeat the positions. Kramer groaned. Again. Yes, you think furniture changed the poison? No, I think people changed furniture. Ellen watched the chair uneasily. Miss Ward. It looks wrong. Because I saw it face the wall before Mr. Price died. Owen made a sharp sound. You keep saying that, but no one else saw it. That, Wolfe said, is why she is useful. Wolfe's eyes moved from one witness to the next. Mr. Price, your sentence first. Owen swallowed. You will sign tonight, or I will send for the police. By the stairs, Ellen said, the chair was not moved for nothing. From near the hall table. Could it have come from the speaking tube junction? I suppose so. Wolfe turned to Drake. Drake tapped his cane once. You used my name once. You will not use it again. Near the umbrella stand. Did you see the study door? At an angle, closed. Priced? I heard the key earlier. That is not what I asked. Drake said nothing. Wolfe turned to Mark Bell. The ledger is mine, and the chair proves it. Near the library door, the telephone rang. Pearly at the Price house. They found the speaking tube junction. It had 4 shutters. One shutter had a smear of old brown wax. One tube led not to the kitchen, but to a narrow opening behind the west panel of Price's study, exactly where Ellen had seen the chair turned. Another opening led to the underside. Of the study chair, Ellen put a hand to her mouth. Mark. Bell took one step backward and brushed the library door. Card with his heel. The card flipped over. Bent to pick it up. That was the moment Kramer was arguing with Wolfe about brown wax. Owen was protesting. Simon Drake had stepped aside to avoid Fritz. Ellen was looking at Mark. Mark was looking at the floor. I picked up the card, placed it flat again and straightened. The questioning went on another 15 minutes. Wolfe asked each about the chair compartment. Owen said no. Ellen said she saw it opened once but not closely. Simon said Price had mentioned a private safeguard. Mark said he knew only that the green ledger had been hidden somewhere. At last, Wolfe dismissed them. When the door closed, Kramer said, I hope you got something out of that. Wolfe did not answer. He was looking at the chair. The walnut chair nearest the wall no longer faced Wolfe's desk. It faced the wall. Its back was toward us, square and deliberate. Kramer saw it. One of them brushed it. No, I said. Brushing a chair moves it crooked. This one is lined up like a soldier. Kramer stepped toward it. Stop, Wolfe said. Archie, describe. I moved around the chair without touching. The front legs were 2 inches from the baseboard. The right rear leg had dragged a short curve across the rug. There was coffee on one rung. On the left arm lay a pale mark, as if a thumb dusted with powder had pressed there. Powder on the arm, coffee on the rung, drag mark on the rug. Under the seat, taped along the wooden brace, was a folded card. I photographed everything, then removed the card with tweezers. It was smaller, heavier, cream-colored. On one side was a black square. On the other side, typed in neat capitals, the chair must face the wall before the ledger can speak. Kramer stared. Now someone is leaving riddles in my murder case. Not riddles, Wolfe said. Instructions. One of those 4 turned it while we were all standing here. Yes, and you did not see which one. No, I replayed it. Fritz with the coffee, Kramer arguing, Mark stepping back, the card flipping, me bending. The chair could only have been turned during the dropped card moment. Kramer reached for the phone. I'll have Bell picked up. Phooey, Wolfe said. You are moving because a name feels good. He kicked the card. Perhaps. Archie saw the card move. He did not see intent. At that instant, Simon Drake stepped aside and came within arm's length. Owen Price turned toward Kramer and could have used one hand behind him. You're protecting Bell again. I am protecting sequence, Wolfe said. Archie, the coffee drop. I touched a scrap of paper to the drop. Still wet. I checked Fritz's tray. One cup had a stain. It had been Simon Drake's. A drop fell from the cup when Mr. Drake moved aside. Toward the chair, Kramer smiled. So Drake turned it. Wolfe shook his head. The coffee drop puts Drake near the chair. It does not turn it. I examined the pale mark. Chalk dust from the outlines I had used to mark the imaginary study walls. Drake's cane touched it twice. Cane, Wolfe said. Kramer looked toward the door. Drake turned the chair with his cane. I took the cane. The silver head was hooked enough to catch the chair arm. I stood where Drake had stood, hooked the chair arm with the cane and pulled. The chair turned a quarter circle. I hooked lower, tugged, and the chair turned until it faced the wall. I examined the cane head. In a groove near the silver curve was a minute trace of brown wax. Wolfe said, "There is your accident, Inspector." It had a handle. Kramer looked ready to arrest Drake personally. Wolfe stopped him. Mr. Drake's cane could do it. It may have done it. But if Drake wished to turn the chair secretly, why use the cane he would be forced to leave behind? I said someone else could have used his cane. Everyone but Kramer had a chance, I noted. Wolfe leaned back. The typed card says the chair must face the wall before the ledger can speak. In Price's study, the chair, when turned to the wall, operated or revealed something connected to the ledger. I said, the chair is not just a hiding place. It is part of a device. Obviously. In Price's study, the chair faced the desk for ordinary use. Turned toward the wall, it aligned with a panel. Something in its arm or underside released the panel or connected the speaking tube. Miss Ward saw Price with the green ledger when the chair was turned. Therefore, the ledger was not merely hidden in the chair. It was connected to the wall, Kramer said. Drake's cane has wax. I'm bringing him in. Bring all four back. Mr. Drake's cane may have turned the chair, but the card was taped beneath it. That required more than a hook. It was placed before or during the interview. Someone knew in advance that the chair would be turned. Kramer stopped. Wolfe said, Inspector, bring Mr. Bell first, separately. Mark Bell arrived at 5:18, pale but composed. He denied touching the chair. Your heel touched it. Yes, accident. Accidents rarely choose the exact direction a guilty mind requires. Your accident gave someone the moment needed to turn the chair. You either helped him or you are being used. Mark's control cracked. Price made tools of us all. Did he make one of Simon Drake? Mark looked at the cane. Drake signed documents using Price's name. Not forged checks. Authority letters. Price knew. Price planned to expose him tonight. Using the green ledger. The ledger contained entries showing whose funds were moved under whose authority. Yours too. Yes? What was in the chair? I don't know. I think the chair held a key. The key to the private lift behind the west wall. A narrow document lift. Price used it to send files from the study to the basement strongroom. Kramer said, There is no lift. There is. Wolfe's eyes opened. Inspector, you will search the basement, not the study. Kramer grabbed the telephone. At 6:10, the call came. Behind stacked wine crates in Harlan Price's basement, police found a narrow shaft, a locked steel box and the green ledger. Also inside the box was a coffee cup stained with poison and wrapped in grey thread. Wolfe looked at the chair facing the wall. There. It has changed direction again. Not toward the wall, Inspector, downward, I asked. Meaning? Meaning the murderer did not remove the ledger from the study. Harlan Price did, before he died. Then who poisoned him? Wolfe closed his eyes. The person who knew the ledger had traveled below, but needed us to believe it had vanished from the chair. Chapter 5. The scratch on the floor. The next morning I went to Harlan Price's house with Inspector Kramer. Pearly Stebbins and a bad opinion of furniture. The Price house on East 68th Street was cold enough for the corpse. The study door stood open under police supervision. Harlan Price's study chair was still there. Heavy, dark and square-backed. The seat faced the desk now, neat and proper. Too proper. Don't touch it, Kramer barked. I walked around the chair once, slowly. The west wall stood less than 3 feet behind it. A panel was open. Behind it was the mouth of the narrow document lift. The floor was polished oak. That was lucky. Rugs are tolerant. Oak remembers. Near the right rear leg of the chair was a fresh scratch, pale against the darker varnish. It curved in a tight arc, precise. It began where the chair had faced the desk and ended where the leg would have rested, if the chair had been turned toward the wall. I crouched. Kramer. He came over. What? That fresh. Could be from moving the chair. Your men lift furniture or drag it. Pearly said, We lifted it when we checked the underside. This mark was made before that. Dust has settled in the old floor cracks, not in the scratch. The scratch had one more useful feature. The rear leg had not been shoved sideways from the front. It had dragged in a pivot. Someone had stood behind the chair between it and the wall and pulled or turned it from there. That meant the person who moved it had stood in the narrow space between Harlan Price's study chair and the west wall. Kramer said, "So someone entered the study." But all 4 witnesses swore nobody entered. I examined the wall behind the chair. The lower hinge of the panel showed one bright scrape. A thin line of grey thread clung to a splinter inside the panel. I removed it with tweezers. We returned to the brownstone at 11. Wolfe was in his chair with beer, I reported. Wolfe listened with his eyes closed until I said, "The person who turned it stood between the chair and the wall." His eyes opened. "Not beside it?" "No, behind it. The scratch proves a pivot from the rear. Demonstrate." I moved the walnut visitor chair into the same relation with Wolfe's office wall. Guy stood behind it, pulled the back rail toward me and pivoted it half around. The rear leg dragged in a neat arc. "That's it." Wolfe nodded. Then the mover had access to the space behind the chair. Kramer said, "Which means he was in the study, or reached it through the wall. There is no room behind the wall. There is a document lift. Too small for a man." Wolfe said, "Archie, place the 4 folded cards on the rug again. Stand where the mover stood." I went into the gap between chair and wall. "Now look at the 4 positions. Owen by the stairs could not see me unless the study door stood wide. Ellen by the hall table could see part of the chair. Simon at the umbrella stand could see the door but not the gap. Mark Bell at the library door could see more than the others." "That points to Mark," Kramer said. "It points to his eyes, not necessarily to his hands, which is why his first lie about standing by the pantry passage matters. Saul Panzer had been sent to learn who had access to Grayson Mechanical. He reported, the pipework had been hired not by Harlan Price directly, but through Simon Drake's office. The invoice had been approved by Mark Bell and paid from a household account Ellen Ward managed. Owen Price had signed for the workman at the front door. "Beautiful," Kramer said. "They all touched it." "Yes, that is why it was chosen." The mail arrived. One envelope had no stamp, hand-delivered. My name typed on the front. Inside was a strip of tracing paper and a short note. The scratch was made before the lock turned. Kramer cursed. Wolfe said, "Read it again." Ellen Ward had said the chair was facing the wall at 6:45. The scratch confirmed the chair had been turned deliberately. But the note now claimed the turning occurred before the lock sound. I said, "Someone wants us to separate the chair from the killing, or bind them properly." Fritz said a boy in a cap had left the note. He had been paid by a woman near 9th Avenue. At 4, Simon Drake arrived under protest. Kramer displayed the scratch photographs. "Your position at the umbrella stand placed you closest to the study door. Your cane could turn a chair. Your office hired the pipework. You denied going near the study interior. Why?" "Because I did not go near it." Wolfe asked, "Did Price summon you to the study before 7:25? "Yes, 7:10, before he locked himself in. He showed me a document, a codicil to his will, changing Owen's share. Hand Ellen Ward's." "Did the study chair face the wall?" "No, it faced the desk." "Then Ellen Ward's statement is false, or she saw it earlier." Wolfe closed his eyes. "Mr. Drake, did Price say the chair proved ownership of the ledger?" "He said the ledger could destroy a thief. He did not say which." "Did you enter the study after 7:25? "No." "Did you move the chair?" "No." "Did you know of the document lift?" "No, that last no was the wrong shape." Wolfe said, "Archie, bring the photograph from the basement strongbox." I did. "You recognize the steel box?" "No." "Your initials are stamped on the hinge." Drake's face changed by 1 degree. "I purchased several legal boxes for Mr. Price." "Then you knew the basement strong room existed?" "I knew of storage, not the lift." "Phooey. You knew enough to lie." Kramer got nowhere further. Drake admitted ordering boxes, legal work and pipe repairs, all at Price's instruction. He denied poison, chair movement and attack on Ellen. After he left under escort, Wolfe rose. He walked to the walnut chair and stood behind it. "Archie, observe. To pivot the chair from behind, the person must stand here. If the wall is close, he has little room. He pulls, the rear leg scrapes, the chair turns. But when the chair faces the wall, he is trapped unless the chair is moved aside or the wall opens. The wall panel, I said. Yes. In Price's study, the mover stood between chair and wall, turned the chair, and then had access to the panel and lift. Therefore, the movement was not merely concealment. It was the operation. I got it. The chair had to face the wall to align the compartment with the lift mouth. Precisely. So someone turned the chair, put the ledger and cup into the lift, sent them down, then turned the chair back. Or Price did part of it before death. Wolfe returned to his desk. The scratch proves the chair was pivoted under pressure. The anonymous note says before the lock turned. If true, Price may have moved the ledger himself before he drank. The murderer then had to know where it had gone. Kramer said Drake knew the box. Mark knew the ledger. Ellen knew the chair. Owen knew the house. Each has one piece. The murderer had two. The chair and the lift. At 6, Saul called. He had found the boy who delivered the note. The woman in the veil had not been a woman. The boy said he had noticed polished black shoes, large feet and a silver-headed cane. Kramer reached for his hat. Wolfe said, "Now you may bring Mr. Drake back." "And arrest him." "Bring him. If you arrest every man who owns a cane, the city will limp." Chapter 6. The banker's last paper, Saul Panzer, came to breakfast with a brown envelope. At 9:30, Wolfe folded his napkin. "Proceed." Saul placed the envelope on the table. Harlan Price was going to expose a theft from client accounts. Client trust money. $480,000 over 3 years. Small withdrawals, false transfers, duplicate interest adjustments, and one forged redemption order. I whistled. Price knew. He prepared a signed memorandum naming the thief. "That memorandum is missing," Wolfe asked. "Source?" "An old clerk in Price's downtown office, Henry Vale. He saw the memorandum yesterday morning before Price took it home. It was in a green folder, separate from the green ledger. Price told him, 'Tonight I name him and tomorrow I ruin him.'" "Was the folder found?" "No. The green ledger was found in the basement strongbox, but not the memorandum." Wolfe leaned back. "Then the missing paper is not merely evidence. It is a destination." The chair had to face the wall, so something could be sent down the document lift. The ledger and cup were found below. The memorandum was not. Therefore, it either never went down, was removed before the police found the box, or went elsewhere. Saul opened the envelope. He removed 4 narrow slips with names: Owen Price, Simon Drake, Ellen Ward, Mark Bell. Vale says Price summoned all 4 to the house because each had a connection to the theft. Owen needed money. Drake had legal control over trust documents. Ellen typed Price's private letters. Mark kept the books. That is Wolfe's kind of fact. It includes everyone and therefore accuses no one. At 10:15, Kramer arrived with Simon Drake, Mr. Drake. Harlan Price prepared a memorandum naming the thief. "Did you know of it?" "No," you answer quickly. "Because I did not know." Kramer handed Wolfe a copy of one transfer. Simon Drake's office stamp sat above a date. The signature authorizing it was Harlan Price's. The witness signature was Owen Price's. The typed statement had Ellen Ward's initials. The ledger notation matched Mark Bell's hand. 4 names and 1 theft. Wolfe said, "This document implicates all 4 and convicts none." At 11, Ellen Ward came down. I typed part of the memorandum. Mr. Price dictated it yesterday morning at the office. The first page, Mr. Price wrote the second page himself. He said some names should be put on paper by the hand that meant to punish them. Did you see the second page? No. Did he mention the chair? He said if the thief tried to deny the ledger, the chair would prove where the last paper came from. Wolfe repeated it. The chair would prove where the last paper came from. Not what the last paper contained, where it came from. Mark Bell arrived at 11:30. He looked composed. "Mr. Bell, explain the reserve transfers. They were authorized by Price, illegal, because he ordered me." "Did you profit?" "No." "Did you know client accounts were being looted?" "Not at first. When I questioned Price, he showed me a note signed by Owen Price acknowledging responsibility for unauthorized borrowings. Owen had been brought in." "That's a lie," Bell turned. "You signed it." "I signed papers because Uncle Harlan told me to." Wolfe said, "Mr. Price, did you steal client funds?" "No." "Did you sign a note acknowledging unauthorized borrowings?" "I signed something. My uncle said it concerned my debts." Wolfe pointed. You had motive to wish Harlan Price silenced, but only the thief needed the chair turned before the body was found, because the chair was proof not merely of hiding but of movement. If the memorandum remained in the green folder with the ledger, discovery below would identify the route. The thief needed the chair turned so the paper could be removed, the ledger sent below, and the chair restored before witnesses or police understood the mechanism. I said, the thief knew the chair operated the document lift. Yes, Owen said, Ellen knew. She saw it, Ellen answered. I saw it that evening, not before. Drake said, Mark knew about the ledger. Mark replied, Drake knew about the steel box. Wolfe raised a hand. You prove my point. Each of you owns a fragment. The murderer owned the sequence, Saul spoke. Henry Vale also told me Price made 2 copies. One carbon stayed at the office. It is gone. The other was sealed in a white envelope and sent by messenger at 6:15. To N.W. Kramer turned toward Wolfe. Nero, Wolfe? I received nothing. Fritz was called. No messenger had come, Kramer said. Then somebody intercepted a message meant for Wolfe. At 1:15, Wolfe stopped for lunch. After lunch, Saul returned with the messenger, a boy named Tommy Rill. A man stopped me. Said Mr. Wolfe had sent him. Gave me $5 and took the envelope. Tall, dark coat. Hat low. Voice soft. Had ink on his right thumb, green, walked stiff, Ellen said softly. Mr. Price used green ink for private ledger corrections. Simon Drake's cane rested beside his chair. Drake said, I was in Harlan's house at 6:15. Witnessed? Owen saw me. Owen frowned. I saw you at 6:30. Saul gave Wolfe a small scrap of paper found in the alley. It was torn from a white envelope. N.W. under the letters was a faint smear of green ink. Wolfe examined it. The banker's last paper was meant to come here. The thief knew that, intercepted it, and later returned to the house because the green ledger and chair still threatened him. At 3, Pearlie called. He had found a concealed shelf inside the document lift shaft. It could catch a paper halfway down. On that shelf was a corner of white envelope and a smear of green ink. Ellen closed her eyes. Mr. Price said the chair proved where the last paper came from. He meant the lift. No, Wolfe said. He meant the shelf, Mark Bell whispered. I did not know about the shelf. Wolfe's gaze moved to him. I believe you. Then Wolfe turned to Simon Drake. You did. Drake stood. I deny that. Yes, but your denial has no chair to sit on. Kramer moved toward him, but Wolfe raised a hand. Not yet. Knowing the shelf is not killing Price, we still require poison, time and the final paper, Drake said. I want my lawyer. You are one. I want a better one. Before Kramer could remove him, Fritz appeared. There is a letter for Mr. Wolfe, by regular post. A white envelope. Inside was a carbon copy of Harlan Price's memorandum. The second page had been torn off. The first page ended. The thief is the person who knows the shelf beneath the chair. Wolfe read it twice. Now the chair has named a qualification. We must find which of you was taught to listen below the seat. Chapter 7. The Wall. Behind the chair, when Nero Wolfe sends you to look at wallpaper, it is not because he has developed an interest in interior decoration. At 10 that morning, Wolfe came down, looked at the carbon copy, and read the last line. The thief is the person who knows the shelf beneath the chair. Kramer had read it 3 times. Drake knew the shelf. Possibly. You said so yourself. I said he did. I did not say he alone did. That was when Wolfe sent me back to Harlan Price's study. Archie, examine the wall behind the chair. I examined the chair. Now examine what the chair concealed. Kramer scowled. My men searched the wall. Your men were not looking for writing that failed to reach paper. The study was quiet. The desk stood near the center. The chair faced it properly. Behind it, the west wall was paneled below and papered above with a faded pattern of brown leaves. The floor still bore the fresh scratch. I moved the chair carefully. With the chair pulled away, the lower part of the wallpaper became visible. I got down on one knee and angled my pocket light across it. A narrow smear of green ink, no longer than the first joint of my thumb, just above the level of the chair back. It would have been hidden from ordinary view, as long as the chair faced the desk. It was dragged, thin at the start and thicker at the end. Near it, a little lower, was a dent in the wallpaper, crescent-shaped. I called Wolfe. Green ink. Small smear on the wallpaper behind the study chair. Hidden unless the chair is moved away. Just above the chair back. Left to right, slightly upward. A dent nearby. Could be from a hand. Good. Kramer arrived. They scraped a sample. The color matched Harlan Price's desk bottle. On the desk, Price's blotter had the impression of writing. Under the light, the pressure marks showed, "Person who knows the shelf." After that came a jagged line. I looked at the wall. The smear began where a hand holding a wet pen might strike, if someone leaned over the chair from behind. I stood behind the chair. If Price sat facing the desk, a person behind him would stand between the chair and wall. From there, the person could lean over his right shoulder, grab the paper and shove him. If Price still held the pen, his hand could fly back and mark the wall. At 4, we had everyone in Wolfe's office again. Kramer brought the photographs. Green ink on the wall. Your wallpaper has testified. Wolfe studied the photographs. Harlan Price was writing the missing page when the interruption came. The final visible words on the blotter are, "Person who knows the shelf." The pen then moved abruptly. A smear appears on the wall behind the chair. That wall could be reached by a person standing between chair and wall. Leaning over the seated man, Mark Bell said. Then someone was inside the study. Yes, but the door was locked. No, the door made a noise. That is all we know. Owen asked. Was Uncle Harlan alive when the paper was taken? Almost certainly. Dead men do not pull pens away in protest. Kramer leaned forward. Then the killer leaned over him, grabbed the memorandum, struck him, and stained the wall. Perhaps struck, perhaps clutched, perhaps startled. The blow was not the cause of death. The poison was, but the ink shows struggle. The wall shows a theft in motion. Ellen opened her eyes. He was writing the name, or about to. Not completely. The line ends before the name. Simon Drake released a breath so small it would have escaped most people. It did not escape Wolfe. Mr. Drake, that comforts you. It does nothing of the kind. Your mouth disagrees. Kramer said. The smear proves the killer stood behind the chair. In the reenactment, Drake was the one who denied being near that spot. Owen barked. He had the cane too. Drake turned on him. And you had every reason to want the memorandum gone. Mark Bell said quietly, You signed one redemption witness. Because Uncle made me. Ellen spoke. He made all of us do something. That silenced them. Wolfe asked for the ink bottle. Pearlie produced it. The cork had green ink on its lower end and a small crescent of brown wax on its top edge. The speaking tube shutter had brown wax, Kramer said. Wolfe grunted. So the person who handled the ink bottle also handled the speaking tube mechanism, or both passed through the same hand. Wolfe turned to Ellen. Who refilled Mr. Price's ink? I did, usually. Yesterday morning at the office. He carried it home in his dispatch case. Who handled the dispatch case? Owen carried it. Mark opened it. Mr. Drake placed his papers inside. I removed letters. Again, everyone, Mark Bell said, I did not know about the brown wax. No one asked you. The accountant flushed. That was interesting. Mr. Bell, what did you know about? Harlan used green ink only for documents he meant to keep personal. Black ink for office records, green for private corrections. The missing memorandum was in green. That means he did not intend it to go into ordinary files. Where would he keep it? In the chair or the strong box? Or send it to me? Yes. Did you know it had been sent? No. Did you know the shelf could catch paper halfway down the lift? No. Wolfe looked at him. I believe that, Kramer exploded. You believe everybody when the noose fits. No. I believe the shape of that answer. It lacks embroidery, Drake said coldly. Then you believe Mr. Bell and suspect me. Wolfe's eyes opened. Mr. Drake, do not confuse theatre with staging. The murderer has staged voices in the hall, a locked study, a chair facing the desk. I merely removed scenery, Kramer said, then remove this. Who stood behind the chair? Wolfe pointed. Archie arranged the study again. I did. Wolfe made me sit in the chair as Harlan. If the killer stood behind the chair and leaned over to seize the paper, where would the ink go? I held the pen, jerked back, and my hand moved toward the wall behind me. Exactly. Who could do it? A person Price admitted to the study. Someone whose presence behind him did not alarm him until too late. Ellen said he would not allow Owen behind him. He would watch Simon and secretaries. Harlan forgot secretaries were people. Wolfe nodded. A valuable defect. Price would allow Mr. Bell behind the chair if ledgers were concerned. He would allow Miss Ward if typing were concerned. He would allow Mr. Drake if signing were concerned. He would allow Owen only if bullying him. Then we're nowhere, Kramer said, not nowhere. We know the killer came from behind. That means the killer's purpose was not merely to get the paper, but to prevent Price from seeing the snatcher's hand until the last instant. I said, a familiar hand? Precisely. Fritz entered with a telephone message. The note read, worker says Simon Drake ordered speaking tube repair, but Mark Bell drew the plan. Bell marked 4 listening points in the study chair with green ink. Kramer's head swung toward Mark. Mark closed his eyes. I can explain. Wolfe said, that is often the beginning of ruin. Proceed. Mark said Price had ordered him to draw the plan. He had marked positions: hall table, stairs, umbrella stand, library door, and study chair. Why did you not say so? Because I knew it made me look involved. It does. I was involved in the mechanism, not the murder. Wolfe said, did you know the chair operated the lift? Yes. Did you know the shelf beneath it? No. But you knew more than you told. Yes. Price built the sound mechanism to accuse people without facing them. He called it his rehearsal. He was going to gather us in the study at 9 and read the memorandum. Kramer said, then he died before the meeting. Wolfe leaned back. So the murderer knew there would be a meeting at 9. He killed before Price could read the name, removed the paper, and used Price's own sound mechanism to create the illusion of later quarrels. Who else knew about the rehearsal? All 4 of us, Wolfe sighed deeply. Of course, at 6 another scrap arrived, placed in Kramer's evidence box. Typed words, the hand behind the chair wore no ring. Ellen looked at her hands. Owen wore a signet ring. Drake wore a gold band. Mark wore none. Kramer stared at Mark. Wolfe did not. He looked at the ink bottle. The murderer is now offering us hands. When a murderer offers body parts in sequence, beware. He has usually kept the important one hidden. What important one? I asked. The thumb. Chapter 8. Mark Bell's Bad Distance. There are lies that come from the tongue and lies that come from the body. The first kind can be rehearsed. The second kind often escapes. Mark Bell had told us he stood by the library door, then corrected an earlier version, then explained the correction, then regretted the explanation. At 10, Wolfe had me place the cards on the rug again. Owen Price was restless. Simon Drake stood straight, cane in hand. Ellen Ward sat nearest my desk. Mark Bell stood by the bookshelves. Archie, the study, I arranged it. The chair near the wall stood for Harlan Price's study chair. A folded paper lay on the desk as the missing memorandum. A fountain pen rested beside it. Wolfe looked at Mark. Stand where you said you stood. Mark moved to the card marked Bell. Exactly. He shifted half an inch. No. Archie moved the card to his first placement. Mark had first placed himself slightly forward of the library door, where he could see through a partly open study door. Kramer saw it. Bad distance, Bell, Mark said. I cannot be expected to remember inches. But you remembered them yesterday when they protected you. Sit in the chair as Price. Right. I picked up the pen. Wolfe motioned to Mark. Now you. Stand behind the chair. I was not behind it. That is not yet a request for confession. It is an experiment, Kramer said. Do it. Mark stepped around and stood between the chair and wall. Lean over and take the paper. I will not. Then a policeman will move you. Mark leaned over. His right hand reached past my head. I jerked the pen backward and up. Wolfe said, Again. This time I resisted. Mark's left hand came to the chair arm for leverage, and his right cuff brushed the imaginary wet ink line. Wolfe's eyes opened. There, Mark straightened. You used your left hand to steady yourself. Anyone would. Not anyone. Someone who had done it before, Kramer said, Show your cuffs. The right cuff bore a faint green stain near the inner fold. Under Wolfe's lamp the shape mattered. It was a dragged line, narrow at one end, wider at the other, like the smear on the study wall. Ink on fingers is work. Ink on the inner cuff is contact during a reach. Ellen spoke quietly. Mark, why did you say you were farther back? He looked at her. Because I knew it would look bad. I saw the chair. That night, after Harlan locked the study, through the door. It was open a crack. I was by the library door. I heard Harlan talking. I moved closer. Through the crack I saw the chair turned toward the wall. And Harlan? Sitting in it, alive, writing with green ink. What else? Mark closed his eyes. Someone was behind him. Kramer came forward. Who? I did not see. I saw a sleeve, a hand, part of a shoulder. Then the door closed. Why not report this? Because Harlan had just accused me of theft. Owen Price gave a harsh laugh. Mark turned on him. He accused all of us in different ways. Wolfe said, What did he say to you? That my books would hang me. Did they? No. Would they? They would make me look like either a thief or a fool. Kramer said, If Bell saw someone behind Price, that clears him of being behind Price. No, it gives him a new story after being trapped. Wolfe asked, Thumb? What? You saw a hand. Describe the thumb. I did not notice. Then you did not see the hand well enough to eliminate rings. Mark stared. You said no ring because the note said no ring. You are borrowing details. I am not. Then tell us whether the hand was left or right. Mark hesitated. Enough, Kramer said. He is lying. Yes, but about what? Wolfe turned to Ellen. Miss Ward, did Harlan Price ever remove his rings while writing? He wore no ring. Owen. My uncle hated rings. Wolfe looked at the note again. The anonymous writer chose an odd detail. A hand with no ring is not distinctive because the dead man wore none, and Mr. Bell wears none. Yet the writer wanted attention on the absence. Because Bell's hand had no ring, or because the hand was mistaken for Price's. Ellen understood first. If someone leaned over from behind and Mark saw only a bare hand, he might think it was Harlan's own hand. Exactly. Mark's face changed. You did think so, Mark whispered. At first. The angle. The hand reached from above, not from the desk. Then the door closed, and you remained silent because you feared the memorandum named you. Yes, Kramer asked. Did it? No. Who did it name? I don't know, Wolfe said. Mr. Bell, did you steal client funds? No. Did you conceal irregularities? Yes. For whom? Mark looked at Simon Drake. Simon's office sent legal certificates for transfers I questioned. Harlan told me to enter them. Drake had approved them. Drake said, that is false. Mark faced him. You told me the same thing in the hall that night. Before dinner, you said Harlan was old and vindictive, and records could be rearranged after he was gone. Drake's hand tightened on the cane. You are desperate. Kramer asked Mark about the chair in Wolfe's office. Did you turn it? No. Did you move it unconsciously? He looked startled. When Archie dropped the card, you stepped backward. Your heel moved the card and your hand went behind you. Did you touch it? I don't remember. That is nearer truth. I may have. I had spent a night seeing that chair in my head. When Mr. Goodwin bent down, I stepped back and my hand found the chair. I may have turned it. I did not know. Wolfe leaned back. Body memory. The body repeats what the mind suppresses. Mr. Bell's hands remembered the true scene before his tongue admitted it. Mark sank. I did not kill him. No, you watched enough to become guilty of silence, not enough to become guilty of murder. Kramer said, You are letting him off. I am putting him in place. Mr. Bell's unconscious movement of the office chair is not proof of murder. It is proof of memory. Wolfe turned to me. Archie, the chair again. Stand behind it as the unknown hand, I did. From Owen's position, my hand was not visible. From Ellen's, only a shadow moved. From Drake's, the study door frame blocked me. From Mark's, my hand appeared over the chair back. Mark alone could see the hand. But his view was bad enough to confuse ownership. Kramer asked, Then who could be the hand? Who could stand behind Harlan Price without alarming him? Ellen? Owen said at once. Mark, Drake said. Drake, Mark said. All three. Owen too, if Price was bullying him. Wolfe shook his head. Again, all four. We need the thumb. You keep mentioning the thumb. The green smear on the wall has a companion dent shaped like pressure from a thumb. The person leaning over Price braced a hand against the wall. Kramer looked at the suspect's hands. Owen's right thumb had a signet ring callus but no ink. Drake's right thumb bore a faint brown stain. Ellen's thumbs were clean. Mark's right thumb had green ink in the nail crease. Kramer pounced. Bell again, Wolfe said. No. Mr. Bell's ink is where a bookkeeper gets ink. Mr. Drake's thumb bears brown wax. Drake looked down too late. The brown wax appeared on the speaking tube shutter, the ink bottle cork, and the cane. Mr. Drake handled the mechanism, the ink bottle, and the instrument that could move the chair. Drake said, You are making a pattern from dirt. All patterns begin in dirt. Saul entered. Drake's clerk says the brown wax is used to seal private authority letters. Drake's office owns the company that made the chair mechanism. Kramer turned toward Drake. Investment only. Did the missing memorandum name you? No. Did it name your firm? No. You answer what is not asked. Did it name the person whose theft your firm protected? Drake said nothing. Mark Bell suddenly stood. The hand behind the chair was not Drake's. The sleeve had a frayed cuff. Drake's cuffs are always stiff. The sleeve was plain dark wool. Whose? Mark turned to Owen. Owen's coat cuff was frayed at the right wrist. Owen shouted, "I never went into the study." "I went to the study door, yes." I heard him writing. "I saw a paper. I reached in when he turned away, but I did not poison him." "You reached in?" "I wanted the note about my debt." "Through the doorway." "The door was open. He shouted at me and slammed it." "Did your sleeve brush the chair?" "I don't know." "Did you get the paper?" "No. Someone else was already behind him. I saw a hand with a brown thumb." Wolfe's eyes opened. Drake smiled. "Convenient. The desperate nephew now borrows Mr. Wolfe's thumb. Perhaps. Or perhaps the murderer has succeeded in giving us too many true fragments." Wolfe stopped Kramer. "Mr. Bell's bad distance gave us the view. His cuff gave us contact. His unconscious hand gave us memory. But the decisive fact is that Harlan Price's study door was not locked when the important events occurred. With the key sound, yes, Fritz appeared. Pearly at the Price house. They found a small brass key tied with grey thread inside the speaking tube junction. It fits the old library door, not the study." Wolfe closed his eyes. "There is our key sound." The witnesses heard a lock. They assumed it was the study. In truth, someone turned the library lock through the wall channel. Kramer took Owen, Mark and Drake downtown. After the door closed, I looked at the chair. It seems Mark is not the murderer. No, he is the witness who tried not to be one. And the hand remains. Brown thumb points to Drake, too plainly. Owen's sleeve points to Owen, too conveniently. Mark's ink points to Mark, too late. And Ellen? Wolfe opened his eyes. "Miss Ward has told us the truth when it was safe. We must now learn what truth she has withheld because it was not." Ellen's face changed, and Wolfe saw it. Chapter 9. Wolfe sets the trap. Wolfe set the trap at 4 o'clock. The invitation was delivered by Inspector Kramer, though Wolfe called it a summons and Kramer called it an outrage. Owen Price, Ellen Ward, Simon Drake, and Mark Bell were brought together but not allowed to sit together. The walnut chair was already in position near the wall, facing Wolfe's desk, innocent, upright. I had placed 4 cards, Owen near the globe, Ellen near the low table, Simon near the wastebasket umbrella stand, Mark near the library door edge. Kramer said, "If this is another furniture drill, I'll need a pension before the arrest. You may need both." Mark Bell looked at the chair and then away. Wolfe began mildly. "We have a dead man. A missing memorandum, a poisoned cup, a document lift, a speaking tube mechanism, a chair that changed direction, and 4 witnesses. Today we shall concern ourselves only with the fall." Owen frowned. "The fall?" Harlan Price was found beside his desk. A body does not arrange itself to suit witnesses. Mr. Goodwin. The position. I moved to the desk, lay a folded coat on the floor, set a blank paper on the blotter. "Mr. Price, show us how your uncle fell." Owen stared. "I didn't see him fall." "Then show us how you imagine it." Owen sat in the chair, clutched his throat, shoved back and staggered sideways. "Thank you. That is melodrama." "Miss Ward?" Ellen sat. If he was writing, he would have leaned forward. Harlan never pushed back abruptly. He hated scraping chairs. He would not fall where he was found unless the chair had already been moved. "Mr. Drake." Drake rose. Wolfe extended a hand. "Leave the cane." Drake placed it against my desk. He sat and gave a lawyer's version. Mr. Bell. Mark stood behind the chair for the smallest part of a second, then stepped around and sat. I saw it. Wolfe saw it. Kramer saw it. Wolfe said, "Suppose he drank. Suppose he had begun the second page. Suppose someone came behind him. Suppose the paper was snatched." Mark closed his eyes. "No supposing. Supposing is all you have allowed us." Mark reached toward the desk. His left shoulder tightened. His right hand moved backward. He rose halfway, but instead of pushing the chair straight back, he twisted it. The chair began to turn toward the wall. Then he stopped. Too late. Kramer began watching Mark. Wolfe said softly. Continue. Mark's hand fell to his side. I made a mistake. You made a correction. No. Yes, you corrected the chair before you could stop yourself. Why? It was at the wrong angle. The room held its breath. Say that again. Mark's face had gone grey. I mean for your experiment. No, you meant for the scene. What was wrong? Mark said nothing. Kramer came one step closer. Answer him, Mark swallowed. The chair should face the wall. Wolfe's eyes opened fully, as it was before. Silence. Wolfe supplied the missing words. As it was before. Owen stared at Mark. Ellen Ward put both hands in her lap. Simon Drake's face became very smooth. Kramer said, Who told you the chair faced the wall? Mark said Ellen did. Everyone knows that now. No, I said. Ellen said she saw it facing the wall at 6:45, but during the fall reconstruction, Wolfe placed it as it was when the body was found. You corrected not to Ellen's earlier sighting, but to the position before the paper was snatched. Mark turned toward me sharply. Wolfe said, Mr. Bell, no one told you the chair faced the wall at the moment Harlan Price was attacked. You supplied that fact. Mark's lips moved. No sound came. Kramer said, You saw it. Yes, Wolfe said. He saw it. That is not yet murder. Wolfe looked at Mark. You will now tell us what you saw accurately. Mark sat in the yellow chair by the bookshelves. I was by the library door, not in the pantry passage. Not as far back as I claimed. The study door was open a little. I saw the chair facing the wall. He was sitting in it, turned away from the desk with the folder on his knees. Writing? Yes, on the second page. Green ink. Who was behind him? Mark put a hand over his mouth. I saw an arm. A dark sleeve. The hand came over Harlan's right shoulder and took the paper. Did Price resist? Yes, he jerked back with the pen in his hand. That made the mark on the wall. The hand shoved his wrist down. Harlan tried to rise. The chair turned partly and I stepped back. Why? Because I thought I was seeing the thief named on the paper. Did you see the face? No. Did you hear a voice? A whisper. Give it. That was all. Male or female? I thought male. You thought much that night. Mark's face tightened. I was afraid. When did you hear the lock? Later, maybe 10 minutes. From the hall. The library lock. Did you tell the police the study was locked because you heard the sound? Yes, but you had seen it open earlier. Mark bowed his head. Kramer said, And you kept quiet because you thought the memorandum named you. Yes. Did it? I don't know, Wolfe said. You knew Price suspected you. You concealed irregularities. I did not create them. Who did? Mark's eyes went to Simon Drake. Wolfe turned to Ellen Ward. Miss Ward, did you know Mr. Bell had seen the chair? No. Who did Harlan tell about the shelf? Harlan dictated a letter to Mr. Drake 3 weeks ago. It concerned storage of sealed instructions in a chair mechanism. I typed only the first draft. Mr. Drake took the rest. Drake said, That letter concerned estate planning. Kramer looked at Drake. You knew the chair could hold a paper halfway down. I knew Harlan had an eccentric filing method. Did you know how to open it? No, your denial is poor. Try again. Drake's jaw tightened. I knew enough to advise him not to use it. Because mechanisms record. Drake said nothing more. Wolfe leaned back. Mr. Bell corrected the chair because his eyes had seen the true angle. His hands betrayed memory. His correction gives us more than his silence. It proves Harlan Price was alive and writing after the chair had turned toward the wall. Therefore, the murderer did not poison the drink long before and depart. He was present while Price wrote. Kramer nodded slowly. So the killer waited until Price began writing the name. Yes, then snatched the paper, and later staged the lock and the voices. Correct. Kramer looked at Mark. That is plenty. No. Mr. Bell saw the act, but not the actor. His bad distance is useful. It is not decisive. Owen burst out. What do you want, a photograph? No, a thumb. Wolfe asked me to bring the enlarged photograph of the wall smear. The person behind the chair braced one hand against the wall while reaching for the paper. That bracing hand made this dent. The thumb pressed into the papered wall. A small trace of brown wax and green ink was found near the dent. Kramer said, Drake has brown wax on his thumb. Yes. Then why are we still talking? Because Mr. Drake is too careful to brace a wax-stained hand on wallpaper during murder. Unless the wax stain was unavoidable or meant to be found. Wolfe turned to Owen. Show your hands. Owen's right thumb had a small cut near the nail. And his signet ring was gone. Where's your ring? At home. It was loose. I pawned it this morning. Of course you did, I said. Wolfe inspected the thumb. The cut is new, Ellen spoke. Owen was in the study earlier, before Harlan locked the door. I saw his reflection in the hall mirror. He came out of the study at 7:10. He had something in his right hand. He wiped his thumb. Owen said, I cut it on the desk drawer. Which drawer? The right one. I checked my notes. The right desk drawer had no sharp edge, but the brass latch of the chair compartment had a nick that could cut flesh. Owen, I said. The chair compartment might do it. Kramer turned to Owen. You opened the chair. No. I wanted the note about my debts. That is all. The chair faced the wall. The panel was open. I reached under the arm and caught my thumb. Harlan shouted. I left. Did you take anything? No. Did you see the shelf? No. Did you poison him? No. Did you see the person behind him later? No. Mark Bell said, I saw no ring on the hand. You said that before. I was wrong. The hand had no ring because it wore a glove. Thin brown leather. I remembered just now. Simon Drake wore gloves. Owen did not. Ellen's gloves were dark cloth. Mark's were grey wool. Drake's brown leather gloves showed a faint green stain near the right thumb, but no tear. Owen's gloves were worn at the thumb. Kramer smiled. Drake, Wolfe said, at last something that is not too easy. Drake rose. I demand. You may demand later. Sit. Mr. Drake, you knew the chair mechanism, the shelf, the legal documents, and the danger in Harlan Price's memorandum. Your glove bears green ink where the wall dent required pressure. Brown wax connects you to the speaking tube shutters. Your cane moved our chair. You hired Grayson Mechanical and concealed your knowledge of the lift, yet I'm not ready to say you poisoned Harlan Price. Kramer nearly groaned. Wolfe raised a hand. Because murder required one further act. The poisoned cup was found below in the strong box. Whoever placed it there knew the chair, when facing the wall, could send objects down. Mr. Drake knew. But the cup could not have gone down with the ledger if Price was still drinking. Therefore it was sent down after Price collapsed. I got it. By someone still in the room after the paper was taken. Yes, Mark Bell said. The hand left before Harlan fell. The door closed. I heard footsteps in the hall. Then later the staged voices. Then the paper snatcher and the poisoner may be different people. But different does not mean innocent. It means sequence, Wolfe asked Ellen. Miss Ward, you were nearest the hall table and the speaking tube junction. Why did the murderer not kill you? Because you did not know the name. But you knew the arrangement, Ellen whispered. I heard someone in the hall after the lock sound. I thought it was Owen. I heard a limp. Everyone looked at Simon Drake's cane. Drake said, My limp is occasional. Wolfe said, Your candor is also. At 7, Saul returned. He had found the pawn shop Owen used. The pawnbroker remembered the ring because there was green ink inside the band and brown wax pressed into the crest. Kramer said, You didn't say that. I thought Uncle took it. Wolfe leaned back. Mr. Drake, you borrowed Owen's ring. You wore a glove but pressed Owen's ring into brown wax to operate the speaking tube shutter. Green ink entered the crest when you braced against the wall. You later returned the ring where Owen could find it, knowing he would hide or pawn it and look guilty. Owen looked sick. Kramer finally stopped watching Mark entirely. He watched Drake. Wolfe said, We will finish tomorrow. Inspector, keep them all. Mr. Drake especially. Drake's voice was dry. Props do not convict. No, but they rehearse better than liars. When they had gone, I turned the walnut chair back. Does Mark's correction clear him? No. It places him. Owen's ring. It places Drake and Ellen's limp. It may place the murderer in the hall after the paper was taken. May? Wolfe closed his eyes. Tomorrow we shall remove that word. Chapter 10. The chair gives its evidence the next evening. Wolfe's office had the air of a courtroom with better chairs and worse tempers. The walnut chair stood near the wall again, facing Wolfe's desk. On Wolfe's desk lay the green ledger, the torn first page of Harlan Price's memorandum, the photographs of the ink smear, the gray thread, Owen's recovered signet ring, Simon Drake's stained glove, and the folded cards. Kramer looked at the chair. I'm tired of that thing. So am I said. But at least it doesn't smoke. Wolfe entered at 6 exactly. Bring them. Pearlie brought Owen Price first. Ellen Ward followed. Simon Drake came in with his cane. Mark Bell came last. Mark did not look at the walnut chair. That was his first mistake of the evening. Wolfe waited until all were seated. This inquiry has been cluttered by furniture, voices, pipes, paper, ink, thread, and fear. The clutter was intentional. Harlan Price built a mechanism for secrets. The murderer used it for murder. Others lied to protect themselves, and their lies served him. Wolfe turned to Ellen. Miss Ward, You saw Harlan Price's chair facing the wall before he died. That was true. He had turned it to use the document lift and the hidden shelf. You concealed because you feared the others, and later you were struck because your knowledge endangered the murderer's arrangement. Ellen nodded. Wolfe turned to Owen. Mr. Price, you reached into the chair compartment earlier that evening, cut your thumb, removed your ring, and then lied because you feared your uncle's memorandum might expose your debts. Your ring later appeared with green ink and brown wax because it was borrowed, used, and returned to make you seem guilty. Owen said, by Drake. No. Simon Drake lifted his head sharply. Wolfe continued. Mr. Drake knew too much about the chair mechanism, the speaking tubes, and the legal documents. He lied because Harlan Price had evidence against his professional conduct. His glove bore stains because the murderer handled it and returned it after using it as another false direction. Mr. Drake is dishonest, that is not rare, but he did not kill Harlan Price. Drake's face tightened. Kramer shifted, then Bell. Mark Bell looked up. Wolfe's gaze rested on him. Yes, Mr. Mark Bell. The accountant did not speak. Wolfe touched the green ledger. You stole from Harlan Price's client accounts, not crudely. You used small transfers, false interest adjustments, and reserve movements. You kept the books so you knew where a theft could hide. You believed Price too arrogant to inspect details. That was your error. Arrogant men often inspect details because they distrust everyone. Mark's voice was quiet. No. Wolfe ignored it. When Price discovered the theft, he prepared a memorandum. The first page described the method. The second named the thief. He intended to gather the four of you, use the speaking tube device to frighten and separate you, then expose the guilty party. Kramer said Bell knew the books, but Drake knew the mechanism. Mr. Drake knew of the mechanism. Mr. Bell knew the sequence, that distinction convicts. You drew the plan for Grayson Mechanical. You marked the listening points and the chair in green ink. You knew that when the chair faced the wall, the hidden shelf could hold a paper while heavier objects passed down. You denied knowing the shelf because the first page of the memorandum said the thief was the person who knew it. Mark said, I did not know the shelf. You knew enough to retrieve the paper from it. Silence. Wolfe leaned back. On the night of the murder, Harlan Price turned the chair toward the wall and began writing the second page. He expected to name you before the others. You entered the study while the door was still open. You were not by the library door at the crucial moment. That was your bad distance. You were behind the chair. Mark's lips thinned. You leaned over him and seized the page. He resisted. His pen, wet with green ink, jerked upward and struck the wallpaper. That made the smear. Your hand braced against the wall and made the dent. You then struck or forced him back, took the paper and gave him the poisoned drink, or compelled him to drink from the cup already prepared. I never touched the cup. The cup went down the lift after he collapsed. You sent it with the ledger to make the basement box appear to contain the whole secret. But you kept the memorandum's second page because it named you, Kramer said. And the chair? The chair was turned back toward the desk to hide the ink smear on the wall. With the chair in its normal position, the stain was invisible. That was the murderer's true need, concealment. I looked at Mark's hands, folded too tightly. Wolfe looked at them too. Later, in this office, during our reconstruction, you moved the matching chair the same way. You did not intend to betray yourself. Mr. Goodwin dropped a card, attention broke, and your hand repeated what it had done in the study. You pivoted the chair toward the wall. The chair no one admitted touching had been touched by the only man who lied about where he stood. Kramer had stopped scowling entirely. Wolfe pointed toward the walnut chair. Furniture does not lie. It preserves pressure, direction, and accident. Your body remembered what your tongue denied, Mark said. You cannot prove I turned it. Archie saw the circumstances. The scratch proved the direction. Your cuff bore the same green ink used in Harlan's ledgers. Your correction yesterday proved knowledge no innocent man had. When asked to show Harlan's fall, you turned the chair toward the wall and said it should be so as it was before. No one had told you the chair faced the wall at the instant the paper was seized. Only the person behind Harlan knew its position during the attack. Mark swallowed. Wolfe took a sheet from the drawer. Also, Saul Panzer found the missing second page. That broke him more than the accusation. Where? In a place Mr. Bell thought secure because it was ordinary. Inside the back cover of his private account book. You trimmed the page and pasted it under the lining. But green ink bleeds under pressure. Saul saw the offset. Wolfe handed the page to Kramer. Kramer read aloud. The theft was made possible by alterations entered by Mark Bell, who alone controlled the reserve balances and concealed false client withdrawals under correction codes. Owen stared at Mark. You let me think he named me. Mark said nothing. Ellen's face hardened. You let them strike me. No, Mark said. Wolfe said yes. You staged the voices through the speaking tubes to keep Harlan alive after death and scatter suspicion. You planted Drake's glove and used Owen's ring. You used gray thread because it had appeared near the chair mechanism. You let each of them protect a private shame while your own crime hid among theirs. Kramer asked, what about the blow on Miss Ward? Mr. Bell arranged it. He knew Miss Ward could prove the chair had faced the wall before the official discovery. She was not to die. Her injury would delay her testimony. A hired man struck her after a false instruction drew her into the alley. Mr. Bell used the same sound trick in miniature, a voice where no body belonged. Mark looked at Ellen then. I never wanted you hurt, she answered. You wanted me silent, that is near enough. Wolfe nodded. Kramer stood. Mark Bell, you are under arrest for the murder of Harlan Price. Mark remained seated. I kept his books for 12 years. He ruined people for sport. He made traps. Wolfe's expression did not change. And you stole from clients who had trusted him. When he discovered it, you killed him and turned fear into camouflage. Do not offer the dead man's sins as your receipt. Mark's control went then, not with shouting, but with collapse. He was writing my name. I saw it forming. M.A. The rest would have followed. I reached over and took the page. He grabbed my wrist. The pen struck the wall. He laughed. Even then he laughed. He said, the chair has already told on you. Kramer had his confession. Pearlie moved behind Mark. Mark looked at the walnut chair one final time. I did not know I turned it here. Wolfe said, that was its evidence. Pearlie took him out. The chair stood where it had stood all evening, facing Wolfe's desk again, proper and silent. Kramer folded the memorandum page. You were right about the furniture. Wolfe looked pained. Inspector, try not to make agreement sound like an accusation. Kramer put on his hat. You'll testify if compelled. You will be. I expected no mercy. Kramer left with Pearlie and the murderer. Owen followed, shaken and smaller. Simon Drake left with the careful pace of a man who had escaped murder but not consequence. Ellen Ward remained a moment. Mr. Wolfe, Harlan built that chair to catch thieves. No, he built it to frighten them. Catching one was incidental. Then it caught the wrong thing. It caught the truth. That is enough. She thanked him and went out. I turned the walnut chair back to its regular place. It looked exactly like the others again, which was irritating after all the trouble it had caused. Wolfe rang for Fritz. Beer, Archie. For me. For me. You may have milk if detection has exhausted you. I'll risk beer. I looked at the chair. So the chair no one touched had been touched after all, obviously, by the only man who lied about where he stood. Yes, and his hands confessed before his mouth. They usually do. The mouth is a late witness. Outside, New York was turning on its lights, one dishonest window at a time. Inside the brownstone, the case of Harlan Price was finished. A private banker had died beside his desk. A memorandum had named the thief. 4 witnesses had heard voices from places no voice should travel, and a chair had faced the wall until the truth came out from behind it. Kramer had called it furniture. Wolfe had called it a witness. As usual, the furniture had behaved better than the people.